Tonight, a national championship is at stake in Phoenix, Arizona. Connecticut looks for its second consecutive national title, hoping to be the first back-to-back national title winner in men's college basketball for the first time since 2006 and 07. Purdue hoping for its first ever national title in its proud program history in West Lafayette. And for one final time this college basketball season, we say hello and welcome to SportsGrid's Bracket Central. It's our national championship special. He is the coach, James Young, JY. I am Ben Stevens. Kevin Walsh will join us when this game tips tonight at 9:20 p.m. Eastern Time. So for the next hour, we preview the entirety of the national championship game. Every angle you need. We'll look at the lines. We'll look at the key matchups. You have the coach's scouting report for a national title at stake tonight in the desert. And, of course, we will give you best bets throughout this next hour up until the game tips a little bit after 9 p.m. Eastern. And, JY, I think when you look at this matchup, one seed out of the East region, Connecticut, the reigning national champs, versus one seed out of the Midwest region, that's Purdue, into its first national championship game in 55 years. When the bracket was unveiled, and we were here just over 3 weeks ago on Selection Sunday, we looked at the field of 68 and said to ourselves, maybe this is the game we get. Maybe both sides will come together for a national championship on a Monday night in April in Phoenix, and this is what we have. It's Connecticut. It's Purdue, a national championship tonight in men's college basketball.
And it's the matchup, let's be honest, folks, that we all wanted. We wanted to see the two best teams in the country square off. And it's something, Ben, that doesn't happen often, because when you're talking about college basketball, and you're talking about 18 or 22-year-old kids, you're talking about being better for 40 minutes, and a lot can go wrong in a 40-minute time. As we bring in a radio audience, Bracket Central, Ben Stevens, Coach Young. Moving on.
Carver and Lacey's on the radio. They got to rock and roll in there. Yeah.
So, you got us. That's okay.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, Jamal Shedd getting hurt, like teams getting picked off. But at the end of the day, there were three teams in this country that I thought were the best overall. It was UConn, it was Purdue, and it was Houston. Mm-hmm. And we knew UConn was on one side, and the other side was maybe going to be that matchup between Houston and Purdue. So we got Purdue. There's so many storylines, right? Matt Painter. There's the battle of the bigs. It's the guard play. It's the bench. It's so much cinema and theater, and to have these two teams make it makes it all that more special.
To your point, JY, when the bracket was unveiled, really since the start of February, there have been three schools around the country, 362 Division I men's college basketball teams, and three of them have had a three-digit price for the better part of the last 2 months. Connecticut, Houston, and Purdue. When the tournament field was unveiled, it was Connecticut, booked as the favorites despite a very difficult East region on paper to win its second consecutive national championship. It was Purdue on this redemption tour trying to buck the ugly disaster that was losing to a 16 seed a year prior. And here the Boilermakers are into the Final Four for the first time in more than 4 decades, into a national title game for the first time in 55 years. So let's paint the path in the march through the madness now into April of how these two teams have reached this ultimate destination tonight out in the desert in a national championship game. Connecticut, the defending national champs, who have been dominant for the past 2 years, mainly in the NCAA tournament. 11 wins, JY, 11 covers. An average margin of victory in their 11 NCAA tournament games the past 2 seasons of 22.3 points per game. A perfect 11-0 against the spread, covering by an average margin of a plus 13 point per game average there, JY, on the expected outcome. I've asked you many times, last year in the Big Dance and this time in 2024, how do you describe what UConn is doing? So on the stage of a second consecutive national championship game appearance for Dan Hurley's Huskies, I ask you one final time, how do you describe what Connecticut is doing?
Magical, historical, unprecedented, and it's just because of the fact that they're bludgeoning teams, and Ben, correct me if I'm wrong. I do think if you go back to non-conference games last 2 years, they've gone and they've hit everyone except for one that was at Fog Allen in a 3-point game where Cam Spencer had a 3-point chance to win it outright. So they're beating everyone up, and it's amazing because you look at a team that lost Sunogo, right? That lost Hawkins, that lost Jackson, and then they almost looked, Ben, better. But I think the thing, and we'll get into it more as I say this, you're going to hear me say this a lot tonight, flexibility. They're offensively flexible. They're not going to just play one style. They're going to figure out what you do poorly, and then they're going to attack it. And then you try to counteract it, and they go somewhere else. It's like chasing a mouse around. Like they keep moving around to catch them. It'll be interesting because you'll have a team that plays their way in Purdue versus a team that's flexible. And the way UConn is beating teams, Ben, the reason why it's so impressive with flexibility is it's almost like every game, it's something different, right? Castle explodes early on in the Final Four game. Then they go into Klingon, right? Against Illinois, 4 out, 1 in.
Yeah.
Right? Then you look at pick and roll, wing pick and roll, handoffs with Spencer. They find so many ways to beat you, and it's really, really impressive.
It was 48 hours ago in the Final Four in the nightcap on Saturday night where Alabama gave Connecticut its toughest test in the last 2 years in the NCAA tournament. And UConn still won by 14 points, covering as a 10.5-point pregame favorite. That is the margin. That is what it takes to knock off UConn, maybe even play them in a close game. Is Purdue that team then on the other side? 55 years since the Boilermakers have reached a national championship game. They are now back. They are on the redemption tour since last year, upended by a 16 seed in Fairleigh Dickinson. They have had their season defined by this month of March, now into early April. For Purdue to be on this stage, JY, shows you what about the resilience of this group and proves to you what this group can do on this stage.
Well, you got to talk about the resiliency after losing, and having a lot of issues in the NCAA tournament as of late. So to me, it's very impressive to look at what they have done. And I've said this a lot with you, Ben. I've always said, well, you can't win a national championship with a dominant big man. You need guard play. Well, folks, we now have the big man that can win you a national championship, right? Because what Zach Edey has done has been absolutely phenomenal. The fact that he could score on the low block. You want lefty hook? Cool. Righty hook? Cool. O-board? Cool. Putback? Cool. I mean, we haven't seen him make a three yet. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'll shoot one tonight. Probably not. But to me, he has been so dominant in his play. I have not seen domination by a guy like this that's gotten this team this far into the tournament. I'm not counting Anthony Davis. Back to the basket big. Patrick Ewing, Ralph Sampson, Hakeem Olajuwon. That's what I'm talking about, the dominance that Zach Edey has shown.
Zach Edey, a pedestrian, 20 points and 12 rebound performance in the Final Four victory over NC State. That was his low. He's had at least 20 points and 12 rebounds in all 5 victories for Purdue so far in the NCAA tournament. And, oh, by the way, speaking of dominance, the Boilermakers, also a perfect 5-0 against the spread. So what's the spread for tonight's national championship game? It's a 6.5-point number in favor of UConn. We'll break down the matchup up next.
Is it pretty much cut and dry that NC State is the biggest surprise of the weekend? I mean, I don't think anybody's bracket had the Wolfpack going this far.
I think they're going to find a way to keep this one close. And we all know Purdue's tournament history under Matt Painter. They've had a lot of early exits when they've been good teams, and maybe this is the time they'll exercise their demons. It's kind of like when Virginia lost to that 16-seed UMBC.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
The fact that I've been able to move to a home that I'm very excited about is it's really cool, and so far just love everybody that I've met at SportsGrid, and I'm just super pumped for the opportunity. Sometimes things that I wouldn't feel comfortable asking, whether it was me playing and just trying to get a tidbit on the golf course and certain thing a player might have learned. Now I'm getting that information because I don't mind asking it.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
The national championship game is just an hour away. In men's college basketball, it's UConn versus Purdue, 1 versus 1 for the first time since 2021, with a national title at stake tonight in Phoenix, Arizona. Welcome back to SportsGrid's Bracket Central National Championship Special. He is the coach, James Young, JY. I am Ben Stevens. Again, here is your rundown for tonight's national title game. It tips at 9:20 p.m. Eastern Time. I know it's late, but you can stay up and you can join us for the fun. When the game tips, Kevin Walsh will join us live right here in studio. We will sweat out our bets with you. We will present those live wagering opportunities for the final college basketball game of this season. But for the next hour, it's a pregame show. It's a breakdown of the national championship. It is a scene setter for everything you need to know. Every single angle, every single number, every single potential bet that you could want with a national championship in play tonight. So let's start with the overall numbers. Connecticut is a 6.5-point favorite. The over-under has worked its way down on this national championship Monday. It was 145.5 when we were on the early line earlier together today. Now down by 2 points to 143 and a hook. Let's start with that number. 6.5 points. The odds makers don't necessarily expect the most competitive national championship game. Do you?
You know, I was stunned at first, Ben, because I thought that there was going to be a little bit more respect given to Purdue. I thought that UConn obviously was going to be favored, but I thought it was going to be more like a 4.5 point spread. I think you even kind of mentioned, we may have talked about it on Saturday night, that we thought it was going to be around that 4.5 point number. So I'm a little shocked that it's a little bit higher. That being said, they're giving the utmost respect to a UConn team that really, folks, just bludgeons people to death. And they bludgeon people to death. We talk about flexibility offensively. So, yes, it makes sense that it's 6.5. Obviously, it's moved a little bit in some books. But for me, they're probably priced about right because of what they've done to everybody.
Again, I have said this. UConn in its Final Four matchup against Alabama was down with 5 minutes left in the opening half. They trailed against the Crimson Tide more in the opening 20 minutes than they had in the entirety of the NCAA tournament this year in 2024. And yet they still won by at least 13 points. Make that a 14-point margin. And they still covered as a double-digit favorite against the Crimson Tide. UConn a perfect 11-0 against the spread in their last two trips to the Big Dance. Now let's go to the other side of things for Purdue. Only an underdog twice this year, but in each of those two games against Arizona, middle of December in Indianapolis, in what was technically a neutral site contest, they won outright. 92-84 as a 2-point underdog. A dog to start off the month of March in their second game on the road in Champaign against Illinois. They were getting 2.5 points. Purdue won outright once again to clinch its second consecutive outright Big Ten regular season championship. So not an underdog often, but when they have, you're saying there's a chance. JY, I've asked you many a times throughout this NCAA tournament, is there a team somewhere in this field? Is there a team still left dancing in this bracket that has a matchup advantage over UConn? Does Purdue have anything in its repertoire that Connecticut has not seen? That's height, by the way.
Big guy. They got a big guy. And they got a damn good one in Zach Edey. And I think this is the key here, folks. And I, as a coach, am going to watch the first 5 minutes closely. And I'm going to be watching the bigs. Because you look at these two guys that are behind us, and Don McClingan and Zach Edey. Zach Edey is something that UConn has not faced all year, ever on this run, because of the way he could post up and get to that jump hook. So you got a chance? Well, we only got one team left, so, I mean, it's got to be either Purdue or no one. So to me, Zach Edey's just his ability to take over and dominate a game and force you to do everything that you thought you were going to do defensively out of your shell is different. So to me, if you see Don McClingan get into foul trouble early, I'm sorry, Johnson's a good big, but he's like a toothpick. No offense. He's going to get run over by Zach Edey. So to me, I am watching that matchup. If Zach Edey can get Don McClingan into foul trouble, that bodes very well for Purdue, because then Dan Hurley's got to adjust. Now the double team may have to come at that point. So I think that is the key matchup, is does Don McClingan get into foul trouble? I will say this, mark my words. Within the first 4 minutes, Zach Edey will try an up and under to see if he gets him up in the air.
We will go matchup by matchup. We will do the big man battle that might revert college basketball back to 1984, not 2024. We will look at the point guards and the orchestrators of these offenses that are tasked with doing so much and are vitally important to both sides. We'll look at the supporting staff and cast in all of those points props that we have on this Monday night for a national championship game. But speaking of points, now let's look at the total. A total that has dropped throughout this day, 145 and a hook, down to 143 and a half as we see it live. Connecticut is the most efficient offense in the country. Purdue is the third most efficient offense in all of college basketball. So, JY, why is the total just 143 and a half and working its way down?
Because of pace. I mean, let's be honest. If you have two teams, especially UConn, that is phenomenal defensively, an underrated defensive team, in my opinion, in Purdue. Now, what you also look at is, I hate to keep bringing it up, you got two big men. Purdue, think about this, folks. In what world will Purdue win this game if they run the ball off the floor? That completely takes away Zach Edey. A Zach Edey who played, I do believe, 40 minutes in the last game. So he's going to play, I'm going to say, 37 minutes tonight, at least, because they'll use the media timeouts to get him his sub and get him his rest. Mm-hmm. They can't win this game running the ball up the floor. They're going to try and slow this game down and play half court. Connecticut will do whatever they can. They're an opportunistic transition team. They're not going to just run the run. They're going to run when they get a break, like a steal. Mm-hmm. Purdue takes care of the ball, unless they kind of throw the ball like it did last game, which I don't think they're going to do. So to me, it's about the pace will be slow. It's a half-court game. And you said it best, man. This could be old school basketball. And as a big man coach, I'm all here for it.
Again, efficiency is not up and down the court. It's just converting in your sets in the way that Dan Hurley organizes things and the way that Matt Painter schemes things out. We have two of the brightest offensive minds in all of college basketball. Neither team plays with a tempo faster than 210, and there's 362 Division I men's college basketball teams. Connecticut has one of the slowest 40 tempos in all of college basketball. They have gone under in all 5 games in the 2024 men's NCAA tournament. The Boilermakers under in 4 of 5. You talked about UConn in the non-conference the last 2 years, not even just the NCAA tournament. They have played 33 non-conference games. They have won 32, all 32 victories by at least 10 points, and they are 28-4-1 against the number in non-conference play. So, JY, let's say this game ends up with a Connecticut victory and a second consecutive national championship, do you expect Purdue to be in the margin for a majority of these 40 minutes tonight in Phoenix?
First 20. I think first 20 we're going to have a game. And I think you will see it, and you've seen it almost every game for UConn after the round of 32. They will play the game close to the vest. Hurley will say something to them at halftime or that under 4 media timeout, and they come out like gangbusters. I wouldn't be surprised if you saw the women's game last night. It's gonna be very similar to the men's game tonight. Close game, maybe Purdue up early, and then at some point late, first half, early second half, you're going to see UConn make that charge.
UConn only up by 4 at the break in the Final Four against Alabama, up by 5, but it was a tied game against Illinois in the Elite Eight before that historic 30-0 run. We're back live right here on SportsGrid's Bracket Central. That's the game. Those are the numbers for how these two teams match up, but now the individual player matchups that will dictate the outcome of a national title matchup tonight in Phoenix, Arizona. Join us next on SportsGrid.
Is it pretty much cut and dry that NC State is the biggest surprise of the weekend? I don't think anybody's bracket had the Wolfpack going this far.
I think they're going to find a way to keep this one close. And we all know Purdue's tournament history under Matt Painter. They've had a lot of early exits when they've been good teams, and maybe this is the time they'll exercise their demons. It's kind of like when Virginia lost to that 16-seed UMBC.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
The fact that I've been able to move to a home that I'm very excited about is it's really cool, and so far just love everybody that I've met at SportsGrid, and I'm just super pumped for the opportunity. Sometimes things that I wouldn't feel comfortable asking, whether it was me playing and just trying to get a tidbit on the golf course and certain thing a player might have learned. Now I'm getting that information because I don't mind asking it.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets and when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Now to the individual matchups that will dictate the outcome of a national championship game tonight in Phoenix, Arizona, between UConn and Purdue. It is 1 versus 1. It is the reigning national champs against the team on a redemption tour looking for their first ever national championship. And JY, of course, everybody's eye tonight will be in the post. Everybody's attention will be on the big man battle that we have that will make you question, is this 2024 or 1984? It's Purdue's Zach Edey, 7'4". It's Connecticut's Donovan Clingan, 7'2". Edey's points prop has been falling throughout the day, 24.5 when we spoke this morning, now just 22 and a hook. Clingan on the other side, who had 18 in the Final Four against Alabama, 22 in the Elite Eight victory against Illinois, his points prop is only a measly 13 and a half. So as you correlate it to these props, to these numbers that we can tie to the box score for a national championship game tonight, both big men are dominant, but both do not often look on the other side and see a replica of themselves. So how do you think their production factors into the matchup that we will see tonight in Phoenix?
Well, it's interesting because Ben knows this because I always go to synergy, right? I always go to where I feel comfortable as a coach. I just pulled it up here. Donovan Clingan, defensively, guarding the low post, 99th percentile. That's scary. He gives up 0.295 points per every post-up. That's insane numbers. But he hasn't gone against Zach Edey. So when you see this 0.295, that lends me to believe that Dan Hurley's going to play one-on-one. And what do you call him? Kling Kong?
Kling Kong.
Kling Kong, whatever.
You got it.
Marbles in my mouth. But I'm trying. The way he can defend in the low post is going to be critical here. I think if you're Matt Painter, you got to go at him to try to get him in foul trouble. I think Clingan does a good job of staying on his feet. Like I said, watch the up and under first 4 minutes. I'm calling it right now. He's going to go for it. I think that he's going to – I don't think Edey goes 30, but they got to find a way to get this kid to about 25 or so points. So I think it's dropping so much now to 22.5.
Yeah.
I would say take the over. But if it was at 24.5, that's like that sweet spot. I think you can get there.
I'm going to ask you about Edey specifically in just a moment, but just to get an idea of the defensive factor that Donovan Clingan has been for Connecticut in this NCAA tournament. 5 blocks, 3 steals against Illinois in the Elite Eight. And I feel like he had a ton more influence the shot near the rim for the Illini. He also had 4 blocks against Alabama. That's more, though, when you have guard penetration into the lane, not necessarily against a big man who is 7'4". For Clingan to record 3+ blocks tonight, it's -150. For Edey to do the same, it's +155. Now to Zach Edey, who had a pedestrian 20-point and 12-rebound performance against NC State. And we can say pedestrian for 20 points and 12 rebounds. He was coming off a 40-point, 16-rebound performance in the Elite Eight against Tennessee. How much does Purdue need out of Zach Edey tonight as it relates to his props to pull the upset and win their first ever national championship?
I think he's got to go over his number. I think he's got to get 25, near 30. Folks, in what mind do you see Zach Edey scoring 19 points and Purdue winning? I don't see it. They have to establish it. Because here's the thing, folks, and it kind of correlates as me as thinking of as a coach. If you could play Zach Edey one-on-one, you're going to negate especially Lawyer and Gillis and Jones's ability. And Jones can create a little bit. Smith's ability to get threes. Zach Edey makes you collapse down, you bring doubles, and they space the floor with shooters. If you play Zach Edey one-on-one, those guys can't create off the bounce. So, going back to what I just thought, think about what I just said to you. If Zach Edey scores 18, that either means they're setting triple teams, which they're not, or Donovan Clingan shutting them down. If he gets shut down, they don't get loose to the three-point line because they can't create. So in order for Purdue to win, I honestly, the magic number, it may be 30. He may have to get 30 points, get Don McClingan into foul trouble, and then force Dan Hurley to double, and then let the other guards get loose for Purdue.
Zach Edey to record at least 30 points and 20 rebounds is a 14-1 number. Two combos of the big man have my attention tonight. That's for Edey and Clingan to combine for 40-plus points. It's plus 210. For Edey and Clingan to combine for 25-plus rebounds, it's plus 410. Zach Edey at least 12 boards in all 5 wins for Purdue in the NCAA tournament. Sure, Clingan only had 5 against Alabama. He's had 8 in all 4 of the other victories for UConn. So that is the big man battle. That will be our front and center attention throughout the entirety of this national championship game. But, of course, the offense starts with the guards in the backcourt. And we have 2 of the 5 best point guards in contention for the Bob Cousy Award for the best point guard in the country this year on display tonight. Purdue's Braden Smith, UConn's Tristan Newton. And you'll see in their prop boards what is expected of them in orchestrating the offense for the Boilermakers and for the Huskies, respectively. Tristan Newton, second highest points prop in this game, 15.5. Braden Smith, only 10 and a hook, but 5.5 assists, or 5.5 rebounds, 6.5 assists. Very similar numbers for Tristan Newton. What is needed out of these guards tonight to start the offense for both Purdue and Connecticut?
Well, the most important thing for me with Braden Smith is he's got to handle the ball. He threw the ball around the gym. I think he had 6 turnovers in the Final Four game. And this is a player that, you know, as much as you look at Don McClingan, like I keep thinking about, Ben, the Alabama game that they played. I think it was in December.
December, yeah.
And when the game turned is when this kid went off. And they need this kid to play really well. And he didn't shoot the ball well last couple of games, if I'm not mistaken. And he didn't throw the ball around the gym. He's got to protect the ball. He's got to get him into the offense. Let's see if they get that high pick and roll. He gets into that kill zone 15-foot pull-up jumper. Yep. If they go under, can he bang a 3? If it's Tristan Newton, be the orchestrator. Be what I think what he does a great job of being a chameleon, right? What do you need from him to do? You need him to push the pace a little bit with the break? He can do that. You need him to knock down threes? He can do that. You need him to come off the pick and roll and be a facilitator? Mm-hmm. He can do that. The reason why they're so flexible is their point guard is flexible.
Yeah.
The other key thing I want to see is who doesn't Braden Smith? Who guards Braden Smith? Do you put Tristan Newton on him? Or do you put Castle on him? Castle a little bit longer, athletic. Braden Smith's have not seen a big guard like this guard him all year.
Braden Smith, only 1 of 9 from the floor against NC State in the Final Four. Made 1 shot. It was from 3. He was 1 of 5 from deep. 5 turnovers, but did have 8 rebounds and 6 assists. Tristan Newton came onto the scene last year in the national championship game. He was a starter for the Huskies really all year long, but it wasn't his team. Adama Sanogo, Jordan Hawkins was the star of the NCAA tournament, and even Andre Jackson Jr., who was the guy last year for Connecticut that did it all. And then Tristan Newton was the game's leading scorer. He had 19 points and 10 rebounds. He is not scared of this significant stage. Now we go to the rest of the supporting staffs for both the Boilermakers and the Huskies. You could list everybody for each side. When you start with Connecticut, it's Cam Spencer, the transfer from Rutgers. It's guys that they have out there like the outstanding freshman, Stephon Castle, who was the game's leading scorer for UConn in the Final Four, 21 points against Alabama. On the other side, it's Mason Gillis, the X Factor. It's Lance Jones, the SIU transfer for Purdue. It's Fletcher Lawyer, who had a big performance into double figures against NC State in the Final Four. What do you think the supporting cast does on this biggest stage of the season?
Well, to me, if I'm looking at Purdue, I'm looking at Lance Jones because I think you have to have a guy that may have to be able to create your own shot. And out of all the guards of Purdue, he is the one, to me personally, that can create his own shot off the bounce. That is his game. Now, you've seen Fletcher Lawyer go to the basket a little bit more because they've taken away the three-point shot. This is a far different team you're facing defensively. Unless what you may see this, Cam Spencer guards someone like Lawyer. Maybe that's when you can kind of take advantage. On the flip side, I am looking squarely at Cam Spencer. I think this is a big game guy. I think he lives for this moment. This is why he left Rutgers response like this, his 3-point prop, I'm looking at him possibly to go over. I think it's over 2.5 at plus money. I think it's something that really you want to consider because I think he's going to be able to find and hunt shots. Other thing to look at really quickly is Stephon Castle, his 3-point prop. They're still hanging that thing and just to make a 3, and it's minus, I think before it's like minus 130, minus 140. If I am Purdue, I'm saying this kid is a straight line driver. I am not going to allow him to do this. I want them to make a 3, just like he did against Alabama.
Purdue, the second best three-point shooting team in the country, 40.6% from deep. They were the first best three-point shooting team in the country entering the Elite 8 matchup against Tennessee. They were 3 of 15 that day. They were 10 of 25 in the Final Four in Phoenix against the Wolfpack, led by Lance Jones, who hit 4 triples. For him to do the same thing against Connecticut, plus 360. I wonder how the 3-point props go for the Boilermakers tonight, because often it's a swarm of Zach Edey in the post and a kick out for a very good look. I'm still on Mason Gillis, 2+ made 3-pointers at a plus 120 number. He has made 2 3-pointers for Purdue in 9 of the last 11 games for the Boilermakers. So here we are. We're about 40 minutes away from tip tonight in the desert for a national championship game between UConn and Purdue. The Huskies hoping to go back-to-back for the first time since Florida did so in 06 and 07, their second consecutive national championship. Purdue looking for the upset for their first ever title of program history. More comes your way on SportsGrid Bracket Central.
I mean, is it pretty much cut and dry that NC State is the biggest surprise of the weekend? I mean, I don't think anybody's bracket had the Wolfpack going this far.
I think they're going to find a way to keep this one close. And we all know Purdue's tournament history under Matt Painter. They've had a lot of early exits when they've been good teams, and maybe this is the time they'll exercise their demons. It's kind of like when Virginia lost to that 16-seed UMBC.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
The fact that I've been able to move to a home that I'm very excited about is it's really cool, and so far just love everybody that I've met at SportsGrid, and I'm just super pumped for the opportunity. Sometimes things that I wouldn't feel comfortable asking, whether it was me playing and just trying to get a tidbit on the golf course and certain thing a player might have learned. Now I'm getting that information because I don't mind asking it.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
The end of the road is here. The last college basketball game of this 2023-24 season is tonight in Phoenix, Arizona. It's Connecticut, hoping for its second consecutive national championship against Purdue, hoping for its first ever national title in program history. He is the coach, James Young. I am Ben Stevens. Kevin Walsh will join us in just about 20 minutes before we get to tip. We're still about 40 minutes away. We won't bemoan the tip time of a national title game at this juncture. You can hear from Donnie Rightside, and he'll do that all day tomorrow. We focus on the numbers. We focus on the preview. We focus on the breakdown. A 6.5-point spread in favor of UConn. 143.5 is that total. JY, I asked you to open up this hour as we looked at these numbers for the very first time. What does this spread say to you about these two teams that enter both looking for a national championship tonight?
It says that they really feel like UConn is that much better of a team. And like I said, I thought it was going to be 4.5, obviously it's 6.5, and it hasn't moved. I thought there was a chance that it was going to move to 5.5, 4.5, and I would jump in. It never happened. Yeah. So it tells you that people are kind of locked into this number. And I think I want people to understand something. I was doing a little bit of digging here, and I found an interesting nugget. Evan Mayakawa, who's doing a great job of doing like analytics, right? There's just something that we call in coaching, we call the kill shot, which is a shot that is like a 10 or nothing run, right? Purdue hasn't given up a kill shot since February the 15th. UConn has had 12 kill shots since February 15th. So 12 games, UConn's gone at least on a 10-0 run. And a team like Purdue hasn't given up a 10-0 run since then. So that tells me this game is going to be slow. It's going to be methodical. It's not going to be if we hear UConn's up like 17, 18 points in like early second half, I'm going to be floored if that happens. I think this game is really close to the best. I still like UConn minus the 6.5. It will not be what we saw against Illinois, which is that 30-0 run. If there's a 30-0 run game against Purdue, I'm going to lose it. I don't even know what to say. I think it's going to be slow, methodical by UConn. They break through early second half. They win by about 10 to 12 points.
The 6.5-point spread is a very interesting number in terms of how this game could be played in the flow that we might see late in the second half. I am of the belief that this will be a great national championship game. There is a ton of hype for this national title game. When the bracket came out and you saw UConn on one side and Purdue on the other, it was a hopeful matchup that both of these schools would reach this Monday night in early April in Phoenix. But just because I think it might be close and competitive does not mean that I believe UConn cannot cover this number. I don't know if there's a team in college basketball right now that can beat UConn. I'm not so sure there's a team in college basketball at this current juncture, JY, that could cover a number against Connecticut. 11 wins in its last two trips to the NCAA tournament. Of course, last year, capping off on a Monday night in early April with a national championship. They are a perfect 11-0 against the spread with a cover margin of 13 points per game. So think about what that means in correlation to tonight's spread. 6.5 in favor of UConn. If they were to cover by the average margin they have in their last 11 NCAA tournament games, that's a 19-point win. That's a 20-point win for UConn. That is how dominant Dan Hurley's Huskies have been. Purdue, an underdog, only twice this year, but they have won outright in both games booked as a dog throughout the 2023-24 campaign. So now we look at how this game will play out. The pace, the tempo, and how it correlates to that over-under. 143.5 is the number. It has dropped by 2 points from where it was earlier on this national championship Monday. Both teams incredibly efficient offensively, JY, but both teams are not necessarily run and gun, get you up and down the floor with a hectic pace. So what do you think that means in correlation to tonight's total?
I think, it's got to be a game to me that's going to have to play under. Because if you're Purdue, you got to shorten this game. You got to play this half court. I think UConn is more likely to try and run. I just don't think they need to run, if that makes sense, unless they really want to try and wear out Zach Edey. And that's going to be more when Johnson's in the game than Klingon, because Johnson's just not a threat in the low block, right? More of a lob threat, rebounder, so on and so forth. So to me, slow pace, And I think it goes under because I think it's going to be a very slow-moving game.
I have talked myself into an over all day long. I bet it at 144 and a hook. We'll give you the cards in just a couple of moments. It's a matchup between Purdue and UConn. It's a matchup between the head coaches, Matt Painter and Dan Hurley, looking for his second consecutive national championship. UConn looking for their sixth national title, which would tie North Carolina for third most all time. But all 6 titles would have come since 1999, and nobody at this moment, UNC or Duke, has more than 3. Connecticut's already got 5 since 1999, maybe a 6th in the last 25 years tonight. But we'll save the coronation for later in the show. It is also a matchup, JY, of the 2 best big men, I think you could argue, in all of college basketball. The 2-time now National Player of the Year in Zach Edey, going back-to-back for the first time since Ralph Sampson of Virginia did so in the early 1980s. On the other side, it's Donovan Clingan, who has been sensational in this NCAA tournament for UConn. 13.5 is the points prop for Clingan. 22.5 is the points prop for Edey. They match up against each other tonight. What does it mean for their overall production as you put it to those props?
Well, if you look at those props, I mean, to me, I could see Clingan possibly getting there. I just think if you're UConn, if you're Purdue, it's like, who do you want to try and do the scoring, right? To me, I think they're going to be more willing to let Clingan score because Clingan doesn't have that back-to-the-basket game, right? So I think that's where you look at. When you look at someone like Zach Edey, I just look at that 99th percentile defensively, Donovan Clingan, I think he's going to give him fits. Now, it's dropped to 22.5. So I could see why you would want to, and maybe I will jump in at 22.5. I'm still going back and forth. 24.5 I thought was too high. 22.5, you give me 2 extra points to deal with. I think Edey's got to get there because you can't abandon all that you've done all year because of Donovan Clingan. Like, if you do that and you're Matt Painter, then you've already given up hope that you're going to win this game. You got to go inside. So to me, 22.5, you know what? Let's do this. I'm going to go over 22.5 for Zach Edey. I'm going to go over 13.5 for Donovan Clingan. I'm not saying Donovan Clingan gets to 20 or Zach Edey gets to 30. I think they just barely get over their number.
So 40-plus combined between the two bigs at a plus 210 number would seem to tickle your fancy. Zach Edey in all 5 games for Purdue in this NCAA tournament, at least 20 points and 12 rebounds, and that's been the floor. It's what he put up against NC State in a game where Purdue scored 63 points in total, and he still had 20 and 12. Donovan Clingan against Alabama, 18 points, only 5 boards, but 4 blocks. In the Elite 8 victory over Illinois, 22 points, 10 boards, 5 blocks. A defensive game changer for Dan Hurley's Huskies so far in this big dance. I actually think there's a slight discount on both of the big men's numbers because of the idea they are facing the other. They are looking in a mirror and seeing their clone on a basketball floor. And I still think both have an impact on this national championship game on this Monday evening. Now let's get into the betting cards. JY, you are the coach. Give us your scouting report. Give us your best bets for this national championship game tonight in Phoenix.
You know, for me, I've been looking at UConn all year as being the best team in the country, and I'm not going to go against them now at this point. A team that's dominated teams through and through. So I'm going to go with UConn minus the points. I think this is going to be a game, like I said, they're going to pull away in the second half, probably a 10 to 12 point win. So to me, I like UConn minus the points. The 2 props I'm looking at, as I'm going to the 3-point line, I'm going to go with Stephon Castle, the star freshman, at minus 138 to make a 3. Here is why. It's probably going to be Lawyer guarding him. They're so worried about that downhill drive. If I'm Matt Painter, we've had this in our scouting reports before. Take away what he can do with his drive. Let him shoot. So I think he knocks down 1 3. Other person I'm going with Cam Spencer. I think he finds a way to get loose. They run him off a ton of screens. He's never shy of the moment, and it's plus money. Thank you very much. Cam Spencer over 2.5 made threes at plus 132.
I hit Cam Spencer 3 plus 3. He's at plus 112, and he buried a dagger late in the game to extend the lead for UConn over Alabama to get to those 3 made triples. So here is my betting card for this national championship Monday. And the first 2, I'll explain the thought process. In Las Vegas, SportsGrid was out there having a great time for Super Bowl 58 in the sports book at our hotel. And we were watching Purdue and Wisconsin in Madison inside the Kohl Center on an early Sunday when both teams were ranked inside the top 10. It was a game at the time that I thought would dictate the outcome of the Big Ten regular season title race, and it did, because Purdue went into Madison and knocked off Wisconsin. And that was all I needed, all the convincing I needed to bet the Boilermakers at then a 9-1 price to win a national championship, to believe in this group, in this year's team, to change the narrative surrounding Purdue, a program that had failed to reach the Final Four in more than 4 decades, a program that got upset by a 16 seed in the NCAA tournament the year prior. I believe in this Purdue team, so I have that 9-1 ticket, but I'm trying to find that profitability. My main play is going to be hoping this game, like JY mentioned, is close. By the way, the Huskies a 3.5-point first-half favorite. Hoping the game is close in the opening 20 minutes. And that 6.5-point number in favor of Connecticut starts to dwindle down closer to a pick. I bet UConn live. I hedge out there. But in the meantime, I look for a little bit of plus money. UConn to win by 1 to 10 points. I think Purdue gives them a game. Ultimately, I think UConn can cover. Not a ton of margin to cover as at least a 7-point victory margin and stay at 10 or less. But I do think this game is not a blowout. I think it might be the first time UConn wins a game in its last 2 years in the NCAA tournament by less than 13 points, preferably by 10 points or less at a plus money price to go hand in hand with my Purdue national championship ticket. I've also talked myself into the over, not only because we have the 2 of the 3 most efficient teams offensively in the country, UConn 1, Purdue 3, and that's not because of what they've done in the NCAA tournament. That's really been their metrics all year long. I look at the Boilermakers, who have gone under in 4 of 5, and I look at how they factor against teams that have reached the Sweet 16, against teams that rank inside the top 15 to 20 nationally in offensive efficiency metrics. They have played 7 of those teams in the regular season that reached at least the Sweet 16. 7 games against teams that at least reached the Sweet 16. 5 over the number, 6 of the 7 over tonight's number, now at 143.5. I actually think we see some offensive production tonight in the desert. And my final one is Mason Gillis, 2+ made 3s. We bet him in the Elite 8. It didn't hit. We bet him in the Final 4, and he came back. I expect Mason Gillis to make at least 2 threes tonight. In fact, if he does not, Purdue's not keeping this game close. Purdue needs the 3 ball to be a differentiating factor against the Huskies tonight, which is easier said than done, JY, because UConn runs you off that 3-point line. Only 33.4% of their opposition shots this year come from deep. It's very hard to find a matchup advantage against Connecticut, and those are the stakes for tonight's national championship game out in the desert.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I can't. I'm not coaching. I'm shaking. I can't wait. And folks, dial in. You can turn the game on. Just listen to us. We going to make some money tonight. Bring it, please.
We certainly are. And we're only about 25 minutes away from the in-game live portion of what we do on SportsGrid's Bracket Central National Championship Special. Before we get to that, and Kevin Walsh joins the show, our best bet for the national title next.
Is it pretty much cut and dry that NC State is the biggest surprise of the weekend? I don't think anybody's bracket had the Wolfpack going this far.
I think they're going to find a way to keep this one close. And we all know Purdue's tournament history under Matt Painter. They've had a lot of early exits when they've been good teams, and maybe this is the time they'll exercise their demons. It's kind of like when Virginia lost to that 16 seed UMBC.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
The fact that I've been able to move to a home that I'm very excited about is it's really cool, and so far just love everybody that I've met at SportsGrid, and I'm just super pumped for the opportunity. Sometimes things that I wouldn't feel comfortable asking, whether it was me playing and just trying to get a tidbit on the golf course and certain thing the player might have learned. Now I'm getting that information because I don't mind asking it.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
The countdown is officially on. It's SportsGrid's Bracket Central National Championship Special. We are 20 minutes away from tip in Phoenix, Arizona for tonight's national title matchup between Purdue and Connecticut. UConn, a 6.5-point favorite. The over-under, 143.5. In just mere moments, Kevin Walsh will join the show. We'll give you those live betting opportunities. We'll give you all of our wagers for tonight's national title game, and we will sweat out our bets alongside you, reacting in live time to what we are seeing with a national championship on the line out in the desert. Before we join Kev over there at the lounge, JY, it's time for our best bet. Of all the bets that you've given out for this NCAA tournament, what is your best one in the final game of the year?
I've been on them all year, and I'm not jumping now. Give me UConn minus 6.5 to cover the spread versus Purdue. I think, like I said many times, I think it's going to be a close game at the break, and then slowly in the second half, Dan Hurley's team throws a knockout punch and starts to pull away. Give me UConn minus 6.5.
I have had Purdue to win a national championship since early February at a 9-1 number. We root that home tonight, but we also try to find some of those live money line closer to a pick'em prices on Connecticut. So my best bet pregame entering tonight's national title out in Phoenix is the over. Over 143.5, over 144.5. We have two of the three most efficient offenses in all of the country. Neither plays at a fast pace, and I am aware of that. But I do believe both teams get to 70 tonight. And if they can get to 70, we can sniff the over. Purdue, 7 games this year against teams in the Sweet 16. They have gone over in 5 of those 7 games. 6 of those 7 totals would have been over tonight's pregame number at 143.5. Yes, UConn has gone under in all 5 games here in the Big Dance in 8 of the 11 in their last 2 years in the NCAA tournament. Tonight, we see some points in a national title game we all hope for when the bracket was unveiled just over 3 weeks ago. And tonight, we get it. It's a 1 seed, UConn versus a 1 seed in Purdue. The Huskies hoping for their 2nd consecutive national championship. The Boilers, their first in program history. Kevin Walsh joins the fun on National Championship Monday next.
get smarter to be on SportsGrid.
20 minutes away from tip at tonight's national championship game in Phoenix, Arizona. And it's SportsGrid's Bracket Central National Championship Special, live right here all across the SportsGrid network. I am Ben Stevens. He is Kevin Walsh. He is here. I'm not sure the camera is showing that at the moment, and he is the coach, James Young, JY. Kev is now in the mix, and we are 20 minutes away from tip time out in the desert. It's the 1 seed in UConn versus the 1 seed in Purdue. From opposite ends of the bracket, Kev, they meet tonight in the final college basketball game of this season. UConn, a 6.5-point favorite. Favored to win their second consecutive national championship. What are your thoughts here on this National Title Monday?
I think it's story time, if I may quickly. See, Ben alludes to my disdain for the Purdue Boilermakers. And people may be a bit confused by that. He's not a man of Big Ten country. What's the beef? Hoosier red doesn't run through this blood. It is a family tale. It is my brother who a few years ago bet on Purdue's money line. A sizable wager at that, not the point, but certainly a little footnote you could add into the mix. And they played North Texas. This was a team that had Zach Edey, but more importantly had Jaden Ivey, as well as Trevon Williams.
Trevon Williams, yeah.
That's right. And that team played horrible all game long and still got to overtime where the catchphrase, dogs go to die. Not that one. No, bark, bark, woof, woof. How about that? And Purdue lost that game, and it became an enemy in the Walsh household. What's incredible as we are here now, still watching this Purdue team with Zach Edey, and it's been quite a ride. But I learned from my brother that last year was payback enough. The 16 seed upsetting the 1 seed was chef's kiss. And my brother, the same one that lost the respectable amount of money on Purdue some years ago, actually has tickets on them to win the national title. If he can forgive, I certainly can forgive. And it's why Zach tonight scores a floor of 25, a ceiling of 38, and gets over that 22.5. That's really all that matters.
Ooh, it's coming in hot, Ben. I like this. Listen, it's a cinema at its finest tonight, right?
Thank you.
And well done. It's cinema at its finest tonight when you think about this matchup. And to me, as a big man, I'm just going to watch these two go to work. I am begging. I am pleading to the officials. Please stay out of this. Let these guys go to work. And let me see the better big win. I think Kevin is right. I think 22.5 Zach Edey. I think he finds a way to creep over. I also think Don McClingan's going to eat a little bit because I think that they're going to allow him to get some touches inside. So to me, the battle of the behemoths. But Ben, after all that, I still think at the end it's probably going to come down to the guard play.
UConn continues its chase for a second consecutive national champion, looking to go back-to-back for the first time in men's college basketball at the D1 level since Florida accomplished that feat back in 2006 and 07. Purdue, a long and storied program in West Lafayette, into its second ever national championship game, its first in 55 years, hoping for that first time to climb the ladder and cut down the nets on this Monday night out in Phoenix. So let's start with the point spread here as we have about 15 minutes until tip. 6.5 JY is the number in favor of Connecticut. We have told the tale, a perfect 11-0 in their last 2 years in the Big Dance. 11-0 against the spread as well, covering by an average margin of 13 points per game. What does a 6.5-point spread signify to you? It's going to be a close one tonight between the Boilers and the Huskies, or UConn prevails and pulls away once again?
Well, I think it's going to be a close one to start this game because I don't think UConn's the type of team that throws their knockout punch early. They seem to kind of take their time with it and get to a point early in the second half where they seem to make their run. So San Diego State. You saw it obviously against Illinois. You saw it against Alabama. And it's kind of just, they do what they do. They pull away in the second half. So I think we have a really good game at the break. Early second half, they pull away. UConn minus 6.5. But it's not going to be this 30-0 run. Remember, I talked about before, kill shots, right? Purdue has not given up a kill shot since February the 15th. UConn's hit 12 of them. That's not going to happen tonight. Slow, methodical pull away in the second half.
I want to let people know that the 6.5 point spread on FanDuel is the only 6.5 left in the market. We are 7 everywhere else. And this spread, to me, is not a number that the odds makers wanted to post, or it's not the number that they would post if they were trying to predict the disparity between these teams. It's because for 2 years running, people go, oh, UConn playing tonight? Click. And they get paid at the end of the game. I mean, every single time. They've covered every single one of these tournament games. It has been unbelievably dominant. The thing is, Purdue has been about as dominant as UConn in this specific tournament. It's under-discussed because the Purdue conversations are about Zach Edey, and there's only room for one, this team covers every game conversation, I guess, and that's the conversation we have around the Huskies. The total update for you, a lot of 143.5s, 144, 143. Again, this number, I know you've talked about it, has dropped from the open. Perhaps you can buy the bottom now if you're playing over.
So now more than 70% of the betting handle is on Connecticut, even as the favorite. When these hypothetical matchups became a little bit closer to the end line for a national title game, the one that was the most likely was UConn versus Purdue. And oftentimes the odds makers had it anywhere from 4.5 points to 5.5 points. And then Connecticut wins by 14 again on Final Four Saturday night. And that line opens up once again when the actual national championship game was decided at 6.5 points. Kev, your thoughts on this over-under? Working its way down today, 143.5. Two of the three most efficient offenses in the country, but not necessarily the fastest teams in all of college basketball. How much offensive production do we see tonight out in the desert?
You know, as we get closer, I actually lean towards the over. I think we're looking at all of it's not just the offensive talent or the efficiency, it's the reliability. And it's at, I'll tell you, you never see a Virginia offense out of these teams. 4 minutes scoreless, 5 minutes scoreless, 6 minutes scoreless. Both of these teams should be able to avoid that. I know we're getting closer to tip, and, there could be some late ads always.
Yeah.
Jay, can I throw a bet at you? Brand new. Unless you guys, maybe you already talked about this, which would be a tick embarrassing. My apologies.
No.
Edey to record 10 or more made free throws?
Off air, we talked about it. We did not mention it on air.
It's crazy. Plus 195. What do you see in the UConn foul? Does that matter? Does UConn's foul percentages impact the way you would bet that?
So they don't foul a ton, but to me, if you get 10-plus made free throws out of Zach Edey, that's probably looking at about 13 or 14 attempts. Don McClinton has fouled out of the game.
Interesting.
So to me, if that's the case, instead of going plus 195 if 10-plus made free throws, I would just take Purdue on the money line, because if Don McClinton fouls out,
Clinton unders, I would say more so, maybe points, rebounds, and assists. You know what I mean?
Right.
If he's going to be able to play 14 minutes because of foul trouble, they can survive. Here's the thing about UConn, where they're so different. Anyone can have an awful night, and they can still win a game because of how deep they are.
We are 10 minutes away from tip for tonight's national championship game. Our final thoughts next on SportsGrid's Bracket Central.
I mean, is it pretty much cut and dry that NC State is the biggest surprise of the weekend? I mean, I don't think anybody's bracket had the Wolfpack going this far.
I think they're going to find a way to keep this one close. And we all know Purdue's tournament history under Matt Painter. They've had a lot of early exits when they've been good teams, and maybe this is the time they'll exercise their demons. It's kind of like when Virginia lost to that 16-seed UMBC.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
The fact that I've been able to move to a home that I'm very excited about is it's really cool, and so far just love everybody that I've met at SportsGrid, and I'm just super pumped for the opportunity. Sometimes things that I wouldn't feel comfortable asking, whether it was me playing and just trying to get a tidbit on the golf course and certain thing a player might have learned, now I'm getting that information because I don't mind asking it.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to Sports Grid's Bracket Central, National Championship Special, live right here on this Monday night, nearly 8 minutes away from tip, tonight in Phoenix, Arizona. Connecticut still in its hunt for a second consecutive national championship. Purdue looking for its first ever national title. UConn a 6.5-point favorite. The over-under 143.5. And just to set the stage for what you can expect over these next 3 hours for as long as the national championship game goes, you'll get the scouting report. You'll get the coaching analysis from JY. And Kevin Walsh is going to bring the energy and present every live betting number you could hope for in the final college basketball game of this season. The bets will flow, the reactions will be live and appropriate, and the energy will be sky high. We gave both of our betting cards in the opening hour. What are your best bets, or the few bets that you have pregame entering the national championship?
Part of this is I want to be able to get involved as much as we can with the people live. Part of this is really what I trust. On the lower end of it would be Tristan Newton's 21.5 points and rebounds. A lot of positive regression in both categories. Rebounds, 3+, only had 3 in each of the last 2. I think you can see 7-8 rebounds for him in this basketball game. And then my favorite bet by far is Zach Edey over the 22.5. Here's the simplest. These are the type of things that I always look for when I'm betting, okay? Is when there's not enough of an adjustment for volume. Zach Edey, in his last 3 games, played 38, 39, and 40 minutes.
Yeah.
So if I told you Zach Edey plays 35 minutes in this game, you would say the odds of that happening are what? Minus 600? Legitimately. He fouls out or is unfortunately injured. Well, on the year, he is 13-3 over 22.5 points when he plays 35 or more minutes. In fact, it's 25 plus he's gotten to in 13-3. You want to go a step further. In half of those games, he scored 30 or more. Half. You're getting better than 3-1 on him to hit 30-plus points. Yeah. It's a numbers game. That volume that basically, I'm not betting on his points. This is how I feel about it. I'm actually betting on his minutes. And if I get 35 minutes, that's what I'm living with. I did it the other day with Mohamed Diarra, and I lost because Diarra was supposed to play 30 minutes in that basketball game. He didn't. He played poorly. I don't know if there was any of the Ramadan effects. I saw people were tweeting about it. I have no idea. But he only played 23 minutes. I lost the minutes bet. I was never getting my points and my rebounds. If Edey plays 35, 13-3 over that number. The books tonight are giving, but that's not what they're factoring in.
Right.
They're factoring in his season averages plus going up against UConn. Mm-hmm. I'll take my chances on that, JY.
No, and I think you make a good point because here's the thing. Purdue is not going to change what they do. They got to go inside. And I said it to Ben earlier. If Purdue doesn't go inside the Zach Edey, they've basically given up and said, we can't win this game. And they can't do that. You got to go at Donovan Clingan early. So to me, it makes sense at 22.5. And I think it's almost, there are times where the book gives too much respect to an opponent. I think this is the case. We know the way that Matt Painter subs. He's not going to take Zach Edey out unless it's near, I would say, 45 seconds from an immediate timeout. So he misses very little court time. And we both all think, or all three of us think, the game should be relatively slow pace to get him up and down the floor. 22.5 points spend makes a lot of sense.
So let me ask you both a follow-up question on your points you just made around the National Player of the Year for a second straight season in Zach Edey. First to you, JY, and then to Kev. We often see in the way a defensive game plan works against the Boilers, there's going to be more than one man on Zach Edey. Is it a true double? Is it attention? It allows him to kick out. He had 4 assists in the Final Four against NC State, and it's one of the reasons you could argue Purdue is the second best three-point shooting team in the country at 40.6%. Is Donovan Clingan versus Zach Edey just going to be mano-a-mano, 1 versus 1? Or how do you expect the defensive game plan to look for Connecticut? And then what does it mean for Purdue and the supporting staff's props in this national championship game?
Well, to me, when Donovan Clingan's on Zach Edey, I think they're gonna play him one-on-one. I looked on Synergy earlier today, before when I was on with Ben. 99th percentile defensively was Donovan Clingan defending the low post. That puts him one of the top in the nation. So to me, a shot blocking guy at 7'2" means that they're going to play one-on-one. Now, if he gets a foul or two early, obviously Johnson comes in the game. Then I think it changes. Then a double team will come because I just think Zach Edey's just going to bury him in the hole where he can get the jump hook in right away. The other thing that you need to look at is I'm going to watch early on is how much heat is on the ball, meaning how much ball pressure. You know, you win the line in the low post, and that's what Donovan Clingan's going to try and do versus Zach Edey. But on the flip side, as a coach, you're telling the guard, if they want to go inside the Donovan Clingan, to Zach Edey, you got to really pressure the ball and take away sightlines. That being said, Purdue doesn't change what they do. They're going to try to get the ball inside, Kev.
Yeah, and just looking up a couple of the performances this year of UConn against post-up bigs, kind of. Hunter Dickinson, Graham Ike. Hunter Dickinson had an interesting game where he scored 15, but he made 3 threes. And Dickinson, I actually remember betting his three-point prop in that game because Dickinson's familiarity playing against Edey from the Big Ten.
Yeah.
He understands, like, I got a 7'2" guy, I'm going to step out and shoot the 3, and that's what he did in the game. Graham Ike had a terrible game, but Graham Ike also deals with a lot of foul trouble when Graham Ike plays. That's the reality of it. Here's the other thing, and why I looked that up and then realized that was a waste of time. They're not Zach Edey. Nobody is.
Right.
I mean, I saw someone talking about this the other day, and it was, I don't know if people realize how much bigger 7'4" is than 7'1". I mean, it is a ridiculous gap. 7'4". I mean, it's Boban. Think about how ridiculously big Boban looks on an NBA court where everyone is basically 6'6", 6'9",
sure.
6'10". Zach Edey, it's high school stuff. It's and I know Clingan is huge, but my point is he's not guarded a single player all year long that's bigger than him.
No.
And Zach Edey is comfortably bigger than Donovan Clingan.
I stood next to Donovan Clingan in our New York studios in the elevator lobby because that was the hotel UConn was staying at for the Big East tournament. One morning I walked in, there's 7'2". It is monumental. It is tremendously large. You've never seen anything like it unless you have stood next to it. But I never thought 7'2" could look small. That's how tall Shaquille O'Neal is. Who was one of the first people to greet Zach Edey after the Boilers win in the Final Four in Phoenix on Saturday? Shaq. And Zach Edey made Shaq look small. Now my follow-up question to you.
Yeah.
If Zach Edey, as you expect, goes over 22.5 and more than likely gets to 25+ in this national title game, what does it do for your thought on Purdue pulling the upset and winning a national championship?
I think it's a great starting point. I think, though, and I know why we bring this up, but he scored 30+ in the game they lost to Northwestern. We talked about this. This was the story on this team last year.
Yeah.
I know, and I think the difference this year is those guys have stepped up. Everyone goes, well, the guys around Edey has to step up. If they score 65 tonight, he could have 30 of them, but that's probably not going to be good enough from the others around him. Similarly, and why, I know the initial thought is, they foul out Clingan. UConn can't win. Yes, they can.
there's so much talent on that basketball team. And in fact, what's interesting, because here's one of the most fascinating things, and the big gap between Edey and Klingon. Edey's going to play 35 minutes, maybe 40. Klingon caps at what, JY? 25 minutes?
28 minutes, yep.
Think about how much time on the floor they're not going to have Donovan Klingon out there. So and that's another reason why, but again, that's why I'm talking a singular thing about the points. He's going to get at minimum 10 minutes of work where Klingon's not on the court. And that's if Klingon plays a great game.
Right.
So it helps, Ben. It helps. But when we're watching this game, oh man, Edey's scoring it well. Too bad Braden Smith is still playing the worst basketball of his season, which he is. I love my bounce back spots.
Right.
He needs a bounce back month to get there. His 10.5 number is very light, but light based on what he did, months ago. He has been bad for a while now. Is that the knee? I don't know. That's a part of this there. And the thing with UConn, you say, hey, Klingon scored 8. Okay, he's done that a bunch of times this year, and it's been fine.
Zach Edey's low in the big dance was in the Final Four. 20 points, 12 rebounds in a game that featured a whopping total of 113 points. Purdue does not win tonight's national championship game or cover a 6.5-point spread if Zach Edey has 17 and 11. Might be a good night for other bigs in the country. It's an abysmal night for the two-time National Player of the Year. The game is set to tip in Phoenix. We're back on SportsGrid's Bracket Central.
Is it pretty much cut and dry that NC State is the biggest surprise of the weekend? I don't think anybody's bracket had the Wolfpack going this far.
I think they're going to find a way to keep this one close. And we all know Purdue's tournament history under Matt Painter. They've had a lot of early exits when they've been good teams, and maybe this is the time they'll exercise their demons. It's kind of like when Virginia lost to that 16-seed UMBC.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
The fact that I've been able to move to a home that I'm very excited about is it's really cool, and so far just love everybody that I've met at SportsGrid, and I'm just super pumped for the opportunity. Sometimes things that I wouldn't feel comfortable asking, whether it was me playing and just trying to get a tidbit on the golf course and certain thing a player might have learned. Now I'm getting that information because I don't mind asking it.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
We are now underway at the national championship game tonight in Phoenix between Purdue and Connecticut. Early on, Purdue has a very slim lead, 5-4, just over 2 minutes gone. Trey Kaufman-Renn scored the first bucket for Purdue. Lance Jones had an and one. Cam Spencer hit a three. And now Tristan Newton buries both of his free throws to tie the game at 5. Live spread still 6.5 in favor of the Huskies. Total on its way up ever so slightly live to 146.5. JY, about 2.5 minutes gone tonight in the desert in the national championship game. What have you seen out of the pace so far?
The pace is what I expect. Actually, UConn's pushing it a little bit more than I thought. A little token pressure off the made free throw by Newton. One thing I saw right away is and I didn't think about this beforehand, is they're going at Alex Karabin inside with Kaufman-Renn in the low block. So that's something to watch out for early on in this game. And the other thing is when they tried to go high ball screen for Tristan Newton, they iced it, which means they pushed him to his left. So the scouting reports, I look at Synergy before. They're looking at all this stuff.
Zach Edey right now in the post against Donovan Clingan.
Still
Gets
far.
his first bucket in this game. It is 7-7. 3 minutes gone tonight in the national championship game. Kev, when you say the word and when you see those live CBB specials, you know we will be on them as well. If you're following along with us here through SportsGrid's Bracket Central, you know it's one of our favorite things to do. Not only the combos that you will find in those player specials throughout this game that update live, but some of the other ones like a dunk in a 3-minute span or a 4-minute span nearly from 15:59 to 12, or 2 made threes or 3+ made threes. They have been great areas of profitability. Anything that catches the eye early live.
So for anyone that was not with us on Saturday, and I'm going to try and use both FanDuel and DraftKings for people to give us as many options as possible. We saw, no exaggeration, an all-time line disparity on a Mark Sears bet that actually lost by 1 to get to 25-plus points as Donovan Clingan gets his first points and dunk in this basketball game. But right now on FanDuel, a few things that we've talked about, that threes market quite a lot.
Yeah.
Minus 115 for 2+. It's not a Bama game level, but it's still decently expensive.
Correct.
Better than 3-1 for there to only be for there to be 2 makes there. As Zach Edey shows you, there's a little more behind the back. You know what I'm saying, brother? Easy, Donovan, easy. Now, one thing that's interesting on the DK specials, though, is they have a few milestones bets. Edey, 25+, 30+, 30+, but also, how about Hackazak? 9+ free throws, 10+ free throws, 11+ free throws. That'll update. One thing to really keep eyes on. 2 markets, and again, I have to say the names because I know how much you'll appreciate it.
Of course.
Early Edey, comeback Zach. 20-1 on Zach Edey to have 15 first-half points, plus 370 for him to have 15 second half points. They feel like a lot of time is gone. 11 more in the first half for Zach Edey, then doesn't feel crazy to me.
Cam Spencer, perfect from the floor to start for UConn. He is 3 of 3, including a 3. He's got 7 points to lead all scorers. He's got 7 of UConn's 11. Zach Edey has 4, and I think something fascinating, JY, 25-plus points for Edey, already into minus money at minus 110.
Yeah, and I think one thing I've noticed right off the bat here in regards to Zach Edey is you're starting to see that they want to get the ball to Zach Edey on that right block, the ability to get to that right, the jump hook over the middle. Last time you saw, Donovan Clingan sit on that left shoulder, which means you want to bring him back to his left. So let's see over his right shoulder, make sure to see if he make use of his left hand. Interesting to watch. Every time Zach Edey's caught the ball, it's been on that right block to get to that jump hook in the middle of the lane.
At the under 16-minute media timeout, a traveling violation called on the rookie, or the freshman, I should say, Stephon Castle. 11-9, UConn up with just about 5 minutes gone. 15:04 remains in the first half. 11-9 is the lead for the Huskies. That live spread has worked just their way ever so slightly. Kev, you told us mostly 7s in the market. Pre-game at 7.5 now in favor of UConn. Total up ever so slightly as well. Pre-game closing number, 143.5, now 147 and a hook.
So one thing now that I'm really interested in, and I would like to talk this out as we hit our first under 16 break.
Love it.
Is this, and it was 20-1, it's down to 12-1. You spend so much time talking, you could miss a great number. That's okay, though.
Yeah.
But Edey to get to 15 in the first half we'll go 12-1. That's the new number. It was, again, 20. My thought is the volume is there for him. Now, I don't know if you guys think the first half could be less, but he's not really the foul game guy. 11 more points it would be, Coach.
And the reason why I like it is you've seen every time he's caught the ball, no double teams. It's single ISO 101 coverage, and he's been able to get into that jump hook. Now, you saw that, obviously, Don McClingan is trying to get him outside and kind of knock him off of that spot a little bit, but he was able to make a longer jump hook than I've seen him make in a while. So I think he's comfortable in there. So I do think that 11+. I'm jumping in right now. I think he gets a 15+ in the first half.
You think he gets 15+ in the opening half? JY, I love it. Was that a dual number or a DK number?
That's a DK number.
Unfortunate. I'll have to text my guys.
But let me ask you this, right? He's not gotten off to an electric start here by any means.
No.
But they're not going to go away from him.
Absolutely not.
I mean,
in fact, I think there's been an emphasis on get him a touch. We're pretty much every offensive possession.
So here's my thing. We're 5 minutes in, right? He's got 4 shots.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking
certainly on pace.
Double digit. I mean, minimum. He's going to have 10 attempts by the end of the half.
Absolutely so.
So now I know if he only makes half of those, that's 5.
Yeah.
But can we get to the line a couple of times?
Absolutely.
I think it's a really nice number here. And again, when we're talking 12-1, that that's you can touch. You don't have to
for sure.
That's not a huge bet.
For
You
sure.
can touch that number and come away feeling great about it.
It's an expected long shot, right? It's 12-1 for a reason, but you see the path of what we have seen early in the gameplay and how it factors in that live betting opportunity. Both of you on that. Let me tell you what I'm on. Our first live 3-point prop of the night. 11:59 to the 8-minute mark of this opening half. I've got 2+ made threes. You said in the first window that you saw, it was -115. We've only seen 1 3 so far in this basketball game. It's now even money +100. I am on that number. Again, 2+ made threes from either team from 11:59 to 8 minutes. It also makes for just an electric rooting interest in the final college basketball game of this season. JY's in. Now, I've had to hammer this into a couple of my compatriots throughout SportsGrid's Bracket Central that when the group live bets, we either all do it or you say that you are going to pass. You don't sneakily put a bet in and not announce to everybody else.
Yeah, that's JY.
Because that's when you can march somebody's mellow.
Oh,
Wanted that to be here for the final college basketball game of the season.
Oh, that's a dunk, baby! JY, we're in business now. We've got 6 early ones.
Let's go.
JY, we have 6 early ones.
Let's go.
And that was on Klingon.
Sure
Donovan
was.
Klingon not quite up there in terms of Zach Edey, the first assist of the game for Braden Smith.
I don't want to cut you off, but I just want to do this because one thing we've talked about on this show, and gosh, do I hope this is not our only year being able to do this with college player props, is how there's sometimes a delay. Now, we're probably watching this on stream. I'm imagining if you're at home cable, you maybe are a minute ahead of us. But that number of 12-1, it took a second to move.
Yeah.
You probably could have got it in after the dunk. But how about the new number? 4-1. Now, for 15 in the first half.
We in there.
Hey, all you can do, Coach.
You got to be in it to win it.
Got to be in it to win it.
Get on top of the number. Tristan Newton answers with a made triple. 14-11. UConn in front. Less than 6 minutes gone. I'm loving this offensive production in terms of the pace as Braden Smith blows what was an easy layup, and that's a foul on Lance Jones, on Stephon Castle in the backcourt. You just yelled out same play. We saw a little high roll, pick and roll screen with Purdue's point guard to Zach Edey where he rolled the first time we had the alley-oop, and then Braden Smith missed what was a pretty uncontested layup, JY. What are you seeing out of the offensive game plan so far out of Matt Painter and Purdue?
I like it. It's a little bit different than what they've done with that screen and roll lob because they know that someone like Don McClingan is going to try and block everything so smart. But then Don McClingan stayed home, and Braden Smith kind of shot the layup late, not thinking it was going to be there. So we'll see how this keeps going. Meanwhile, first sub is in. Diarra is in the game, and he is checked in for Castle. Looks like, and there's a block there by Edey.
Diarra, by the way, went to my high school. Found that out yesterday.
Wow.
So, if anything, go UConn for that.
Whoa!
Two blocks. Give him a point for that.
Two blocks
I mean,
in the
he's saying
same defensive possession for the Makers by the big man, the one known as Big Maple. By the way, 3+ blocks was -150 for Donovan Klingon.
On your way.
It was a +155 number.
It's down to play
Zach Edey.
-110.
It's -110.
I'm jumping in right now.
3 blocks?
No, 4 blocks. 4 blocks. We already have it.
Yeah, I mean, that's still not a bad bet.
I'm
not a
taking
bad
it.
bet,
I took it. I jumped in.
All right, I'm going to come in with you on that one as well. I like it. TVB Live specials.
14-11 here with about a little more than 13 minutes to go in this game right now. Edey with more than half of the team's points. Cam Spencer with half of his team's points. So those two have been excellent to start this game. Take your time.
Oh, there you go.
Look
No
at
double.
that patience.
No double. There it is again.
That's
there it is again.
beautiful
There it
little
is again.
baby.
Look at that patience, JY.
I like
Look
this.
at the patience
I like
already.
this.
Why?
I like
Zach
this.
Edey.
I like this. I
You
like
would
this.
say in the big man matchup so far, Zach Edey is getting the better of Donovan.
Yes, absolutely getting the better of him, getting to his spot, and he's getting pretty deep position. So you wonder how much longer Dan Hurley is going to go with not going with the double team as Diarra goes to the basket and gets a layup.
That was a pretty easy lay-in for your high school mate there in Hassan Diarra.
Here's what I would say, though, JY, right? If you're UConn, are you sure you're bailing on your coverage? I mean, hey, Klingon, win half of these battles.
Yeah.
His baskets are only worth 2, and we're not going to let anyone else on this team to get in a rhythm. Because here's the thing. Nobody else is.
No.
UConn's winning this game. Let's not forget that.
Look,
We're rooting on
look
some
at
Zach
this
Edey
again.
wagers.
Up and under.
What I say? What I say?
It. That's 10 and 1. Zach Edey will walk to the line for a three-point play. And let me tell you, Zach Edey is feeling himself right now. Comes into the UConn lead, 16-15, and attempt to tie it.
I was wrong. I said the first 5 minutes, but he did it in the first 8 minutes. Up and under. He kept going to that jump hook, jump hook, jump hook. Folks, what is the first counter to a jump hook? That is an up and under. Got him in the air, got the and one. Now he goes to the bench, and now Edey may really start to eat.
Was that the first foul on Donovan Klingon or a second?
Great question. I believe it's first, though.
First.
Okay, so he
Unless
goes to the
that
bench.
Lance Jones foul was on him.
No, I don't believe so.
It was on Tristan Newton. No, you're right. So that's going to be the first one.
Zach Edey pays off the three-point play. He's got 11 of Purdue's 16. We are all square at 16 apiece. A couple of first-half numbers I want to direct your attention to. UConn still a minus.
I mean, is it pretty much cut and dry that NC State is the biggest surprise of the weekend? I mean, I don't think anybody's bracket had the Wolfpack going this far.
I think they're going to find a way to keep this one close. And we all know Purdue's tournament history under Matt Painter. They've had a lot of early exits when they've been good teams, and maybe this is the time they'll exercise their demons. It's kind of like when Virginia lost to that 16-seed UMBC.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
The fact that I've been able to move to a home that I'm very excited about is it's really cool, and so far just love everybody that I've met at SportsGrid, and I'm just super pumped for the opportunity. Sometimes things that I wouldn't feel comfortable asking, whether it was me playing and just trying to get a tidbit on the golf course and certain thing a player might have learned. Now I'm getting that information because I don't mind asking it.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Under 12-minute media timeout in the opening half of the national championship game tonight in the desert. UConn up 18-16. We apologize for a small technical difficulty live right here in studio. We didn't even know. Our excitement was sky high. Now, Kev, a couple of minutes ago, Zach Edey started with some volume. He had scored 4 points. You saw a number on DraftKings that was for 15-plus points in the opening half. Yeah. It was 12-1. Zach Edey now has 11. What was the last number you saw?
I saw plus 280, and I'm pretty sure the last man on planet Earth that got the bet in was Coach James Young. We both went Q, and I went to ask Coach one more question. He goes, I'm in, and I go, they closed me out. So that number is gone. It's not coming back. They do have some Edey milestones, 25 or more, minus 370, 30-plus, minus 105. To get to 35 is 4-1, 40-plus points is 16-1. Let me ask the annoying question. I know we're doing. Can we get on the ball again?
That's a foul.
That's their fourth. I want to ask an annoying question.
That's also the second on Samson Johnson.
That means they either gonna have to play him or bring back Klingon in.
I'm gonna ask an annoying question.
Please.
Well, you know what? Let me see if the market's still up to make it worth everyone's while.
Yeah.
And you know the question that I'm going to be asking you. So let me just see if the market's going to be up throughout the game. It is. Player of the tournament. As we sit here right now.
Yeah.
Are you sure? If this game ended right now, Ben, the most outstanding player is Donovan Klingon and not Zach Edey.
I don't know if it's Donovan Klingon, but I know it's somebody on UConn if Connecticut wins. I maintain that. I know it has happened before. Hakeem Olajuwon back in 1982.
Yeah.
But it hasn't happened now, or 1983. It hasn't happened in 4 decades.
Yep.
If UConn wins their second consecutive national championship game, Cam Spencer might get it. Tristan Newton might get it. Both off to a pretty good start. Donovan Klingon, by the way, back into the basketball game because of the foul trouble on the reserve in Samson Johnson. JY, do you agree with that statement? If Connecticut wins tonight, a UConn player wins most outstanding player, or could Zach Edey still be in contention even in a close Purdue defeat?
He would have to get like 35 points in order to get it, which he may.
Pays for that.
He may, but to me, we talked about earlier that I thought my sleeper was going to be Cam Spencer, who's off to a good start. I think he was 10-1 pregame. So this game's getting up and down.
Little bit of pace here. Don't forget, I need 2+ made threes in this window. It started 11:59. Hassan, Holy Cross Queen, stand up. There's one.
All right, brother.
We love that. We love that. The heart of New York City, Hassan Diarra buries one.
This game's got great pace.
Yes.
Because I feel like everyone's playing great defense, and this game's on pace to go over the number.
That was part of the reason that I liked the over. Just 2 great offenses, like you mentioned. That yes, we have 2 really good defenses. Ooh, Zach. Oh,
no! Let him
have the only time you didn't want the foul ball.
A shooting foul or is that on the ground?
I think it's on the floor.
But is that on Klingon?
No, it's on Diarra.
No, I think that's a shooting foul. It's just that he got the tip. He got the tip, which would have put us at 13.
By the way, 1 free throw already attempted for Zach Edey. We talked about 10+ made free throws earlier in the show. A plus 950 number, plus 195.
Plus
very
195.
differing numbers.
Plus 195.
So if he makes both of these, that would be 3 made free throws for Zach Edey here to start. He clanks the first one off the back of the iron. Still alive, 6.5 points spread, by the way, in favor of UConn. This is the thing about Dan Hurley's Huskies. You feel like Purdue's playing a great game. You feel like the Boilermakers are matching UConn each and every step. And yet, UConn's still ahead, and the live line is the same as the pregame number.
Edey, by the way, got a third block. By the way, which he
did.
That 4+.
Yep.
He did miss that first free throw. Hey, count your pennies, brother. That's 2.
Yep.
So he needs 3 more points for our live bet. I think part of that, being honest, is the excitement every time Edey touches the ball is great for us.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
I think
and you have 25+ as well, pregame.
Over 22.5.
Okay, fair enough.
It's also, though, just I think a situation right now where UConn is kind of just getting them in bunches, and they've also knocked down some threes.
Yeah.
So they're winning the math game right now against Purdue, which is huge. And a big part of it. A big part of it.
And your question, by the way, Kev, about could Donovan Klingon add enough from the offensive output perspective to have that 40+ or 50+ come into play hasn't really been the case. Braden Smith has made a couple of very difficult buckets by the rim. This is the first time that I can remember seeing this live line less than the pregame number, JY, now 4.5 in favor of UConn.
Yeah, I mean, UConn is playing pretty well. And right now you have a bunch of guys on the bench and starters, so now a little dribble weave action. But Purdue's playing as well as I thought they could play early on in this game, and they're in it. To me, it's all about can they find a way to get a second foul. I thought it was going to be it.
I've only got about 40 seconds left here before the 8-minute mark for one more made three-pointer I don't know if we've seen 2+ in a 4-minute window so far in the national
I don't
championship.
believe so. Oh, wow.
That's gonna hurt.
Nasty collision down low between UConn's Hassan Diarra and Purdue's Trey Kaufman.
That's
Red.
their 5th or 6th
There
foul.
was a whistle there.
I think it's
That would be 6, I believe.
I think that's
unless
6.
the number on the game broadcast had not been updated yet. Oh.
Wow, that
Hassan Diarra went up. Trey Kaufman Ren turned around. They collided.
That's a neck.
And both fell to the floor. I think both guys are all right at the moment. Yeah, that is the 16th foul, by the way, on UConn.
Oh.
Ooh, an
What was
illegal
the call
screen
there?
off the inbounds pass?
Interesting.
Oh, wait. They call illegal screens pretty early in the game, but they don't do that in women's.
21-21. Purdue's has made one more field goal and one more free throw.
Yeah.
The value of the three-point shot. Purdue's only attempted 1. UConn's hit 3 of their 5. That's right now the difference in this game. That's why, to your point, though, Ben, it doesn't feel like UConn's playing that great. They're not. It's just the math game.
Yeah.
It's why, it's how Nate Oates is obviously, who, by the way, before the show got going here, did say that he's committed to staying at Alabama.
Correct.
Huge news. But it's why those Alabama teams can beat every single team
Give it
in
to 'em.
college. Get in there.
Give it
paint
to
touch.
'em.
Edie
Right
with a
up.
deep paint
Give it
touch
to 'em.
up and over Donovan Clingan.
One more, coach.
He's got 14.
14.
14.
Zach
By the
Edey
way-
has 14 points to start here as Purdue takes a 23-21 lead. Live line 4.5 in favor of UConn.
That was 20-1. But we're
Right.
doing a show here, so I
Right.
wanted to set it up for all of us. And it dropped to 12-1.
Right.
So, I mean, we're talking about a really big number that Zach Edey is very close to clearing. Right now, if it was up, Ben, what would you set a Zach Edey first half points prop at?
Oh.
He's at 14 with 7.5 to go.
I would set it at 20.5. It'd probably be 19.5.
Go inside.
But I think your point, Kev, was so valid in terms of the minutes that he would play tonight and just the volume. And we have seen that be Purdue's plan. JY, you talked about it pregame. You need to get the ball in low. It is what has gotten you to this point in a national championship game. Sure, it's Donovan Clingan on the other end. But right now, Zach Edey is getting the better of Donovan Clingan.
Absolutely.
And I don't think this matchup is particularly close at the moment, JY.
No, it's not even close at all. And you start to wonder, unless you go with the mindset of, when Donovan Clingan's guarding Zach Edey, you let him go one-on-one and you try and isolate everyone else. But to me, if I'm Purdue, every possession, I'm going inside the Zach Edey as he got away with a travel. No, he did not.
Didn't get away with it.
Didn't get away with it.
That's the under 8-minute media timeout.
But I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead. Yeah.
As a coach, you got a big man that you don't give a big man the ball who posts up rolling down the lane. Like that's a dumb pass. Let him get set, throw it up top, throw it in. You're doing it all the time. Don't come out of your shell because you see him rolling down the lane with the whole lane there. Get it out, get it in.
Zaquille O'Neal for Zach Edey to score 40-plus points on the FanDuel Sportsbook is plus 650. The Boilers in the first half, plus 158 on the money line, but tied at 23 all. UConn back to a 5.5-point favorite. How are you seeing this first half flow?
So I am doing this because, to me, it's a fascinating betting angle. I am not, even though a part of me is, yes, trying to get Ben to agree with me.
Yeah.
But you just said something that forced me to bring this up again. Zach Edey is dominating Donovan Clingan.
Mm-hmm.
So even if this game ends in a UConn 85-80 victory, right?
Over.
I did that intentionally.
Thank you.
Can you give it to Clingan?
No.
If he gets eaten alive, can you really give it to? So let's forget Edey. They lose. Let's forget Clingan. He's been dominated. Are we betting Cam Spencer? Are we betting Tristan Newton? Both guys right now have 7 points here in this game. Stephen Castle, I'm going to be honest with you. Sorry, Lisi. Well, not sorry. You hit plus 720 and scored 20 points. That was the only time that's ever happening again. Okay? Because the next game he plays will be in an NBA uniform or in the Summer League. He's 0 for 3 from the field, 0 for 2 from 3. He's going to cap out about 7 points tonight. Those other guys are already at 7. Caravan's really Caravan was somehow more important last year than this year. Weird, and it's not the point. Yeah. Are you right now thinking about Spencer or Newton bets here as UConn moneyline wagers?
Yeah, absolutely so. I think I would focus solely on Cam Spencer and Tristan Newton at this moment. I wouldn't go outside that. One of those updated MLP odds. Hassan Diarra, by the way, tied for the team high, 7 points with UConn right now, but I still believe it would be Cam Spencer.
We have a huge change.
What is it?
Tristan Newton is now the new favorite for UConn. Edey's the favorite for the overall market because it's so comparable to the UConn money line. He is actually shorter than the Purdue money line. Plus 230 for Purdue to win the game, 2-1 for Edie to win player of the tournament. Plus 270 now on Tristan Newton, plus 340 Donovan Clingan, plus 430 on Cam Spencer.
Right.
Quick disclaimer,
Yeah.
because I've said this on a few shows, and I'm just going to keep saying this, though. I swear it's supposed to be for the whole tournament. Everything about the odds suggests it's not.
Correct.
So, trust what's in front of you is what I would say. As much as when they hand this out, they'll mention what a player averages for this tournament, it is very clear the odds believe they are going to not only really vote on the last two games, they're really just going to give it on tonight.
It is listed as the Final Four most outstanding player, but I would also agree. I think it's the best performance in this national championship game for the eventual champ. If it's Purdue, it's Zach Edey. That's already done. If it's Purdue, it's Zach Edey at a 2-1 price. As you mentioned, not necessarily a better value play right now, somehow, some way, than what we are seeing in Purdue's moneyline number. But for UConn, very much up in the air. If it is a player, Dan Hurley and Zach Edey getting into it.
Oh, I like this.
Man,
I like this.
Two guys that will say whatever to anybody and not back down from a challenge. Tied at 23 all. We are back underway at the under 8-minute media timeout. First break for Zach Edey.
So you go inside right away.
Caleb first in there. They go to Donovan Clingan. That's a bucket and a foul. Donovan Clingan will walk to the free throw line.
Oh, I'm happy for you, though.
Yeah,
I don't want to leave you hanging. I didn't know what I was like. Listen, we didn't bet 7-footers for 15 plus.
But Ben, it kind of talks to what we talked about, and I've mentioned about the flexibility of offensively of Dan Hurley. As soon as they go out, they go right inside the Donovan Clingan. So it'll be interesting to see. I thought they would get him before. Maybe they're checking on him really quick before they go back in the game.
That's what I was going to ask right there. You said that if Zach Edey really took any breaks outside of what a media timeout or a called timeout on the floor would be, it would be prior to that media timeout. This was after the media timeout. They give Zach Edey the blow and Caleb first is in.
Yeah, I think I'm looking for. Did he get banged up a little bit on that last possession there? So I think that's something that's pretty important to look at here, and hopefully we can get some vantage point of look at the bench.
Plus 340 on Edey and Clingan to combine for 50. They're at 19.
Clingan's got 5.
Clingan's got 5.
Zach Edey's got 14 at this moment. And Zach Edey's already back in the game.
So I think what happens is that they probably brought him out, they checked him out, and they got him right back in the game.
Rested 33 seconds, the game broadcast is saying in the previous 2 games. 6.5-point live spread, now same as that pregame number in favor of UConn. Total still up there, though. Kev at 148.5. What are you seeing out of the pace so far and that offensive output?
Oh, it's another block.
Is that
That's
a fourth block for
That's
Zach
4 block. I hit that.
Trey Carlson-Red also had a hand in there, but I think
no,
that's 4.
I think that's got to be.
It should be Zach Edey.
Edey got it first. Throw it in.
So, as lawyer,
that's a rebound and a point. That's 16. They wanted that to be offensive goaltending. It was very, very close on the cylinder. As of this moment, ruled as a bucket.
It's going to
be
checked.
the 16th point for Zach Edey. We're back on SportsGrid Bracket Central. Just
12-1.
I don't.
I mean, is it pretty much cut and dry that NC State is the biggest surprise of the weekend? I mean, I don't think anybody's bracket had the Wolfpack going this far.
I think they're going to find a way to keep this one close. And we all know Purdue's tournament history under Matt Painter. They've had a lot of early exits when they've been good teams, and maybe this is the time they'll exercise their demons. It's kind of like when Virginia lost to that 16-seed UMBC.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
The fact that I've been able to move to a home that I'm very excited about is it's really cool, and so far just love everybody that I've met at SportsGrid, and I'm just super pumped for the opportunity. Sometimes things that I wouldn't feel comfortable asking, whether it was me playing and just trying to get a tidbit on the golf course and certain thing a player might have learned. Now I'm getting that information because I don't mind asking it.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Live right here, wrapping up our first hour of the live portion of SportsGrid's Bracket Central, our national championship special. We're at the under 4-minute media timeout, and UConn has extended its lead to 5, 30-25 over Purdue. Live number in favor of the Huskies is 8.5. That total, that at its peak live was 148, and the hook JY has worked its way back down to the pregame number, 143.5. 3 minutes, 45 seconds left in this opening half. What do you expect to see from both sides?
Well, what I want to see is, honestly, Fletcher Lawyer, you're a good little player. I like you. Stop driving the ball to the basket, please. Can we get the ball back inside to Zach Edey? 7-11 from the floor. He should be getting the ball. Ready, folks? Every single possession that Don McClingan is guarding him because it's barbecue chicken and they're not bringing double teams. Go inside. Try and get a second foul on Don McClingan.
So I do have an unfortunate update for you. Is the box score has Zach Edey at 2 blocks.
What?
Plus 4 blocks.
Huh.
Now, Ren Kaufman has 1.
Yeah.
So we saw that one that looked debatable. It looks like they did give it to Ren Kaufman.
Right.
But the broadcast is the one who informed us that it had 3. I will say anybody.
Box score also had 3 at a certain point on ESPN. I checked.
Yep.
So I don't know what's going on. I don't know if you want to confirm on your box score. Maybe mine's not updated. Sometimes that does happen with a computer.
Yep.
But, there's a 5+ out there for Edey at like plus 340, which is like, whoa, 1 block.
Right. If we
That's,
think. Right.
You know what I mean? So I'm just trying to make sure that we give everybody an important update like that. How about some live first half here, Ben?
Please.
30-25 score, 345. These numbers are all about to close. 68.5 is the first half total. 6.5 is the first half spread. Any thoughts on that?
That one is intriguing to me. A lot of juice if you want to back the Boilermakers. Getting 6.5, a number they are covering and need to cover the next 345, but it's minus 136 of juice. What do you think? 20 seconds left here before we start our next hour.
I don't know if it's going to win, but full value is Purdue's money line. In the bonus, I know UConn is as well, but the Edey touches are going to result in, you know what? Over. There's 14 points in this first half.
68.5 is that first half over-under, plus 1060. Purdue first half money line. Our next hour starts in less than a minute.
smarter to be on SportsGrid.